The word is parallelism. Where did this idea come from?
Can we? I don't know. I was supposed to be on Friday because I think we're all sick and tired of this. How about we watch a movie on Friday? Are we doing a test on Friday?
One of the multiple choice practices.
It's like call rate, so when our.
And then after that Tuesday after Culver.
I think we should do that.
You think so, huh?
I like my phone.
Okay, does anyone need a form for this, or are we?
We still have like a whole backside.
Oh, okay.
I don't know my refund.
Okay, I'm gonna write this one long. So, the use of components. Oh, that says components in a sentence that are grammatically the same
Oh my god.
or similar in the construction. Let's do that. Let's leave it right there. That sounds good. Let me rewrite this.
You should have written this definition.
What would it be?
You should have written this sentence.
That would have been cool, wouldn't it? Would have caused, it would have caused, it would have been too hard.
The use of components in a sentence. The sentences are grammatically the same. Sentences are similar.
Oh, yeah, that wouldn't have been that hard. Well, Noah just did it for you if you want to write it as that, as the definition. All right, so basically parallelism creates a kind of sense of meter in the poem. It like creates this rhythm. Oh, sorry, I keep talking about poems because I'm coming from AP Lit now. I'm definitely not. It creates this sense of meter in the sentence. So it's like, it's making it feel like there's this repetitive pattern going over and over again. So this is going to work better for me to describe it with examples. This is not the example that you write down, but listen. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief, it was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. So that's the first line of Tale of Two Cities. Has anyone read that book?
I started.
Yeah, it's a tough read.
Second best
That's
seller in
exactly
the world.
where I
The first line. So it's got this sense of parallelism. It also has another rhetorical strategy. What is the strategy of when you repeat a phrase at the beginning of successive clauses? Starts with A. Anaphora, there we go. It's an anaphora. Yeah, repetition of the beginning of the phrase is anaphora. So that sentence has anaphora because it repeats over and over again. It was the. But it's also parallel because each of the little segments are the same length. They're the same grammatical construction, and that repeats over and over again. So we could call that parallelism. You could call it has both of those things, anaphora and parallelism. Okay, let me give you an example that's going to be a little bit more important for you. So Frederick Douglass books, open up to page 32. I got extras you can use up here, and there's a box that you can grab one.
totally did too. Oh,
Maybe.
No, I already.
Actually, I want to do it in front.
Name on it.
Sorry, I'm changing my mind. I want to do a different one. Open to page 46.
Whoa, actually open to page 45.
I can't believe
Have you ever done that where you just go like? Yeah, where's the backside?
All right, page 46. Under example on this, on your word of the day, you don't need to write down the full quote. Just write down, I assert most unhesitatingly. So find the quote in the middle of that giant paragraph. And it says, I assert most unhesitatingly. And just write that down so that you can find it again under example. I assert most unhesitatingly. I'm gonna write parts of this.
It's the rest of this.
Yeah.
Do you want us to write the whole stuff?
No, you can just write the beginning part and then write down the page number so you can find it. Let's start there. All right, so the sentence goes on. It says, I assert most unhesitatingly that the religion of the South is a mere covering for the most horrid crimes, a justifier of the most appalling barbarity, a sanctifier of the most hateful frauds, and a dark shelter under which the darkest, foulest, grossest, and most infernal deeds of slaveholders find the strongest protection. All right, one of the reasons that he's using parallelism here is because this could be a thesis statement to what he has to say about Christianity, Southern Christianity. I want to be really clear. He's critiquing a certain kind of Christianity, right? But it kind of is his thesis statement for it. And so he's able to pack his whole argument into one sentence because of the use of parallelism. It's grammatically correct and it doesn't sound like a run-on because the parallel structure of it makes it feel like smooth. It makes it feel like cohesive and all together, right? It also makes it stand out because the use of parallelism is like nice to our ears, you know? But let's look at the way that it's parallel. So you've got verb covering for the most horrid crimes, a justifier of the most appalling barbarity, a sanctifier of the most hateful frauds. So he's repeating that particular form of verb, justifier, sanctifier, covering for the most horrid crimes. So he's repeating this idea that it's doing these things. It's covering, it's justifying, it's sanctifying, it is, what are the other ones? Sheltering, but he doesn't say that. He says a dark shelter. That's where he breaks the parallelism, which I didn't write up here. So covering, justifying, and sanctifying. And it says this over and over and over again, that it's doing all of these three things. Why is it important to point out that the church has a, how do I want to phrase this? Why does he write it as a kind of verb here? He could have said Christians do this thing under the name of Christianity, but he says the church does this, this, and this, like religion does this. Yeah.
Because it's like an action. Instead of like saying they do this, it's like implied as a verb that it's already being done. Already.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. A big thing that we've been talking about with this book is that he's not talking about one person and how they're doing something wrong. He's talking about an entire system that needs to be broken. And so you have the systemic verb happening over and over. Now, Will, were you going to say something? Did you have your hand up?
I was just saying, yeah, it just like makes it seem more like rooted in the paper.
Yeah, good. Good. And then we get the word most horrid crimes, most appalling barbarity, most hateful fraud. So you get a little bit of repetition happening in the sentence. Why repeat that word most over and over again? Why not just leave it at the beginning? Yeah, no.
It helps. So like, not that it's left out if you don't say it, but it does help with the repetition. It's the idea that like this is the most horrid crime, but that's not the only like hyperbole. It's also the most appalling severity. Like all of this is like he wants you to know just how bad it is by conveying the similar sentence structure so that you'll relate it to. That's all that relates to the rest of the sentence.
Okay, good. Yeah, and he's using it as a superlative. So like a superlative, if something is the worst of its class or the best of its class, you know, you are the most awesome. You are the awesomest person I know. That would be an example of superbly. You're saying out of all these other things that are also cruel, this is the cruelest thing of all, right? So Noah used the word hyperbole, and I agree with the rest of what you said, but I think
I meant the
hyperbole.
word superlative.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Slipped my tongue.
Yeah, because he really believes this. Hyperbole is exaggeration. Like he really believes that under Christianity, the worst things happen. So he wants to repeat that over and over again so that you are continuing to place Christianity at like the top of this like hierarchy of worst, you know? And then you get what it has done. So it is the most horrid crimes, a justifier of appalling barbarity, a sanctifier of hateful frauds. In each of those, you got an adjective. Yep, you've got an adjective in all three: horrid, appalling, and hateful. Let's see why they're combined with what they are combined with. For something to be horrid, we're in October. What does it mean for something to be horrid? You know, squeaky. Okay, yeah, so there's like a kind of wickedness here.
Yeah, I guess
Kinda
like evil,
disgusting.
like gross.
Like that's what I think of like.
Or it's like surprising almost.
What did you say, Noah?
I said gross, but then Zach said vile.
Vile. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got wicked, evil, surprising, gross, vile. So horrid is coming from like when you say surprising, who said surprising?
Oh, I did, sorry, yeah, I said surprising.
Yeah, okay. So why do you think surprising was something horrid?
I guess because it's like, you could have a crime, but that could have just been like, you stole something. But if it's a horrid crime, that means it's like you're like taken aback at like how bad it is, I
Yeah.
guess.
Good, there's an element of shock there too. I like that. Lexi? Yeah, good, okay. Awesome, tell me about appalling then. It's a little bit different than horrid. What does it mean for something to be appalling? Yeah, Lexi?
I think it's kind of awestruck. I don't know how to.
Yeah, but as a
Like,
negative.
unsettling.
Okay, Cameron, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just.
Unsettling for something to be appalling?
It's also surprising.
Yeah, a kind of like shock value again. Okay, tell me this, like if I were to say your behavior is, if I were to point to a student and say, your behavior is horrid today. How is that different than me saying to that kid, your behavior is appalling today? Okay, so like how dare, so
I think the
like,
opposite. I think appalling is
feels like
worse.
disturbing to me.
Yeah.
Appalling is like I can't like horrid is like wow you're worse than normal almost. And then appalling is like no student has ever acted like this in the 20 years that I've been teaching. You know,
Okay.
That's kind of what.
okay, so it's like horrid is like potentially a little bit more temporary.
Yeah, it's like
and-
oh my gosh you're so bad today. Appalling is like I hope that you leave the state.
Okay, so it's a level of degree then too. We're going up in degree here. Ally Rose?
It feels like horrid is more individualistic and it compares you to yourself, but then appalling is comparing you to society.
I think that's true
It's
too.
like horrible things in
Yeah,
society,
yeah,
and you're like
condition.
equivalent.
And if you
Yeah.
are like the worst in society, you're worse in everything. But if you're the worst in yourself, you're not the worst in society.
Okay, I see what you mean. I think that's because appalling has this kind of moral component to it, where when you say something is horrid, it might just be like, I could say like, you know, something that I tasted, oh, this is horrid, this is like horrible food, you know, and it's not like I'm saying that like the person who made this was immoral and evil for making this horrid food. I'm just saying this is bad food. Maybe the worst I've ever tasted is bad though. If I say that food is appalling though, it's almost like I'm saying that chef like personally insulted me by creating this food, you know, like it's almost like I am offended. There's a level of offense to appalling. And I think that's because it has this moral component. And then hateful fraud. How does hateful differ from appalling and horrid? It's really, I'm trying to find a way to describe what hateful means. That's hard. Full of hate. Yeah, no.
It's almost like well hateful is almost something that's like easy to hate. I don't feel like it's necessarily full of hate. I think it's like oh man, like when you're watching TV and there's like a character, like I watch Survivor, so there's like always that person that's like oh my gosh, this person sucks. So like there's that character that's like meant for you to be hated, and so they're almost like for this to be the most hateful fraud, like maybe isn't yet hated, but like maybe just by the slaves, and he's like trying to show everybody
I
else
see.
outside of the South.
Okay,
So
good.
it could be someone he wants you to hate, or like that like should have the hate placed upon them.
That
almost
makes sense. Okay.
Almost instead of the slaves, or like who they're giving the fraud.
So really trivializing it, making it smaller, it's kind of a level of unpopularity to
Yeah.
that.
I'm not entirely sure. But when we read the context, sanctifier of the most hateful frauds, when we look at the context, we can kind of infer. I don't know. I can't think of the word. I
That's a
want,
good word
but,
for it.
We can kind of see that when they use the word hateful, it's almost directed towards a certain people or a certain person, certain
Good.
group, certain thing.
Good.
And so again, it's not necessarily just looking right at the word hateful, you wouldn't necessarily think of that immediately, but when looking at
Hateful
that
fraud.
in
Yeah.
the context,
Yeah.
and you
I
can see that
agree.
it's directed towards a certain thing.
Let's go back to my student who's misbehaving. You are horrid today. It feels like temporary a little bit more, right? Laura Kate is horrid today. Okay, Laura Kate, you're being horrid today. Terrible thing to say, but maybe you can get over it. Your behavior is appalling today. Feels like a degree up. Like it feels like it's got this moral
Feels like
component.
your
Like
parents are getting involved.
yes, we need to fix this behavior, right? Your behavior is hateful today. How does that change the meaning? Noble?
That's like,
Yeah, it makes it sound like
Totally.
But then I also like the parent thing where it's like, I'm not mad at you.
Just
Like,
disappointed.
like, it's
Say
like,
that.
like,
I think for me, hateful, if I were to say that what Laura Kate was doing is hateful, it's like it is purposely directed to me. It is like, why are you doing this? Like it's almost like it's a disbelief in the way that she's like her behavior is like attacking me. You know, Elle did this to you. I didn't do this to you. Elle told me to say this to you.
So-
All right. So yes. So it's like got this component of like, it's not just like, okay, appalling, I get the parents involved. If behavior is hateful, you are out of my class. You're making this class an unsafe space. You know, like you're not going to be in here
doesn't it
anymore.
feel like almost like an attack?
Yes.
I feel like there's different reactions to all three. So like if someone said horrid, like, oh, I'm sorry, like that's kind of what you do.
Right.
If it's appalling, it's like you feel guilt almost.
Uh-huh.
So that's like, ooh, what did I do?
That's the
And-
like, I'm disappointed in you.
Well,
Yeah.
that's like how like you almost want like I don't know, maybe you don't. I do. I would be like, oh, I need to fix this. You know, like, I feel
Yes.
so terrible. For horrid, it's like, oh, okay, like I'll put it back a notch. But appalling is like there's an apology necessary.
Uh-huh.
And then like hateful is like, wow, like I might be bad, but she's like really pinning this on me. You know,
Yes. Okay, good.
It feels like a direct attack almost. So it's like there's kind of like, you know, like passive aggressive and like shoot, what's the third one? For like assertive. So that's like you could be assertive with like appalling, like you can, like try to fix it, but you can be passive and trying to fix horrid, and then like it's very like aggressive.
This is aggressive. Okay, cool. So we've gone up again in notch, right? So the parallelism then is like heightening.
Yeah,
the
it's
way
like
that we're seeing this
increasing the
behavior
third
as we go.
dimension.
Abby?
Also references, the word hate is used for like hate crimes,
Yes.
and that references like the personal direction and like
Yes.
aggressiveness, I guess, that comes from that feeling.
Absolutely. So when he says the frauds are hateful, it is like it is personally geared towards one group of people because you hate them. You know? So let's look at the sentence again. The religion of the South is a mere covering for the most horrid crimes, a justifier for the most appalling barbarity, a sanctifier of the most hateful frauds. It's getting worse and worse and worse as we go. Let's talk about a couple words that stand out to me. Barbarity. First of all, I know my board is getting very messy here. What does it mean to be barbarous? Barbarity.
Truthful or I guess
Savage is a good word for it.
Yeah.
What did you say,
Without
Abby?
civility.
Without civility. So saying that a church creates appalling barbarity, what is that saying then? What is the juxtaposition between a church and a barbarian?
They're supposed to be like modern, like have like strong beliefs, and instead they're kind of like archaic beliefs or
Yeah.
things, or like
Well,
Yeah,
If you look at like class systems, kind of like what Abby's saying, the top of the class was like the preacher and the reverend, the minister, and they're all like, the closest you can get to God.
yes,
Because class system was based off of like divinity, and so they're like, if you look at nobility and stuff back before
The mouthpiece
US,
of God,
obviously,
yeah.
but if you look back to like 1600s, like you have God, you have the preachers, or you have God, the king, the preachers, common folk, and the peasants, and then like the peasants are like savage. So we have like, the term vulgar comes from like common,
uh-huh,
and so like they're discussing the bottom, and so like barbarism, like barbarism, is kind of like the opposite of the church. Like that's
Yes.
how it's been seen,
yes.
and a lot of cities, like a lot of cultures are cultivated or like cultured by Christianity. Like that's how it's been seen, like every time that like the Padres, like every time that the Spanish conquistadors would come over, they'd be like, okay, like we need to civilize, or like when
Right.
when the pilgrims, like all the like the Protestants came over, we need to civilize Native Americans. We need to, like all this is based on the idea of like culture rests in religion.
Yes,
And so I think that that's something that you see come out here. Is it's like, look, you're trying to be cultured people and you're trying to act so pious, but like this is the barbarism from the church.
yes, awesome. Yeah, Zach,
And I feel like religion can also be seen by a lot of people as more like a secondary thing you can kind of like add on top of like,
uh-huh,
a lot of people think like, well, first make sure you can survive, make sure you can meet your basic needs, and then if you're doing just fine, you can make sure find some community. So the fact that people are religious implies that they're doing well off, they're doing fine, they're high class of some sort. So for them to be barbaric.
okay, good. So there's hypocrisy there then too. So there's irony in the way that Noah and Abby are talking about it. There's hypocrisy in the way that Zach's talking about it. Okay?
I think like also what if you understand or if you can go to church, you aren't educated, you have like England, you have like tribal, you pray and like a lot of the rich landowners were religious. They all like were praying and they were inviting ministers over, and it also had a lot to do with like society, like being part of society. If you were religious, you were kind of like, or if you were pious, which is the word that used a lot, it was like, oh, so this is like a role model citizen, and then to
Yes.
go against one of their
Yeah, good. So it's like if you're accusing those same people of being barbarians rather than being pious, educated, civilized, a role model for society, you're basically saying that like they're the like bloodthirsty, like uneducated, uncouth, uncivilized people of society rather than the civilized ones. That's a very basic way of summing up what you guys all said, but it's like the deepest irony here. And I really like the use of this word too, a sanctifier of the most hateful frauds. What does it mean to sanctify something?
Like
Okay, so I think it's like make it okay, right? But in church, what does it mean?
like a sacrifice.
it's like to lift it up.
Make it holy, I heard someone say. Yeah, you're giving religious significance.
Yeah, it's like remembering why you're doing what you're doing, I guess.
Okay, good. So it's like a part of like remembering your religion, your purpose, and your religion. Yeah, when you sanctify something, you are saying this thing is of God. This thing is kind of blessed by God. So to sanctify hateful frauds of the religion, you are saying that these things that are like the very worst of the worst, that are fraudulent and directed towards somebody, are actually then becoming a part of your religion. They're holy to you. this sentence goes on and on and on. There is so much we could say about this sentence, but let's stop there with this one and write down some effects if you haven't already. You can interpret our board. It was a long word of the day. Good job. Okay. And then last time I said I like had you guys in groups, but there's so many people missing and I want to make sure. Yeah, you might need to be too. Yeah. So we can be in full groups. I really hate doing them. How would you guys feel about me not doing them?
Oh, like couldn't we all like write
You still have a participation grade that's going in for 25 points. If you've been here doing stuff, then you'll get those full points.
I'm just waiting for my answer. Actually, yeah, when are you getting?
I graded it this morning.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so 4 groups for this next bit. How should we do it? Okay, so I'm gonna have. I want groups of 4 for this. Don't worry, the people who aren't here are gonna have to do it on their own and we'll work it out, but we need groups of 4. And so for me to put in the groups, okay, so I don't want to split up people who like working together, but I also, if we want to work with new people, I could just make it random and do counting off the numbers.
Do it.
Okay, let's just count off some numbers and have you guys work with different people. Okay. You were what? But wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
Everyone remember their number?
18, 19, 20, 21. So we're gonna count to 5. Okay.
Wait a second, why?
So we can be group of 3 to 4. Plus 1.
Whoever is the plus.
So we're a group of 3.
I don't know.
Yeah, whoever's by the, yes, what that last number is.
Oh, yeah. 5 groups?
Natural selection.
We're gonna count to 5 because I don't want too many
Throw in
presentations.
6 whenever you want, just like
One.
6 at some point. You can even go 1, 2, 6, just.
Simon, you're 3. Diana. Say it out loud.
2.
3. Oh, wait. We did say that.
Oh, wait, 5, sorry.
Okay.
5, sorry.
Zach's 5. Skyly's 2.
Zach's 5. Skyly's 1, right?
No, wait, so.
Let's start again. We're counting to 5. We're counting to 5.
2.
Say it out loud.
1. 2.
Spencer.
We didn't count 5.
5. And 1. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. 1s come on over here. 2s go on the back by the
Do I
cupboard.
need my stuff?
3,
or
yeah,
something?
take your stuff. 3s can be right around here. Well, no, I want you to move up a little bit though. 3s right around here. 4, well, where are we? 4s maybe like right over here and 5s over there. Find your people. I don't know why that was so hard for me. I'm sorry.
Did you get a 5 on your calculus exam?
I sure did. It was the AB test though. It wasn't the BC.
They're both equally very hard.
Did we find our people? So we got 3s meeting like right here. We got 4s and 5s. Okay. Oh, these are good groups. Yeah, I'm happy about this. Okay. So here's what you are doing.
Let's go.
Now I'll tell you at home what you're doing in a second. Okay, so everyone is finding as a group you are finding 3 passages in the book that you felt like were particularly powerful. They can't be passages that we've already talked about as a class, because what the goal here is to give everyone lots of different like ideas for which passages they could talk about when they're writing their paper. So you're finding 3 passages in the book that you felt like were powerful. I want them to be shorter. If they're one sentence, that totally works. That would be a great way to do it. They can be up to 2 short paragraphs, but no longer than that, because you're going to have to present on the rhetorical like strategies within that. And if it gets longer than that, it's going to take forever to do your presentation. For this first part, you're just finding the quotes, and I'll tell you what to do. You don't have to make anything, but you are going to be giving a presentation. No, just up in front of class. Okay. All right, so again, in your group, you're finding 3 passages that you think are very powerful. Once you have your 3, call me over and I'll give you a choice of which one you want to focus on.
Think of this one.
Okay, so you guys at home, you're fine to just find one passage. So you're working on your own, find whatever passage you want. I don't mind if it's a repeat. You're gonna find one passage that you think is powerful that we have not discussed yet as a class. So you can't do the first couple paragraphs, you can't do the part about slave songs or about Mr. Severe. You can't do the part that we just talked about today, but you can find anything else besides that. So find that passage, and I'm going to pause the recording and tell you what to do next in a second. Okay, so here's what you are doing. You know how when we spend a lot of time on word of the day, I write down the sentence up on the board. I tell you about like kind of the context of the sentence. This is if I'm doing a good job. Today I did a little bit of a sloppy job, I think, but I tell you about the context of the sentence. We start breaking it apart. We are thinking not only of the word of the day. Like when we looked at this sentence, we were not only thinking of the parallelism part of the sentence, but I was trying to get us to think about the whole thing. I wanted us to think about the verbs and the adjectives and the way that it's structured and the order and why he's using certain words over others and all of those different aspects of it, right? So for your presentation, you're going to be doing that for the class. Writing a rhetorical analysis about an entire book can be a daunting task, especially one like this, because surprise, actually, none of the groups had any of the same passages in common, which means like out of our 5 groups, there are at least 15, 15 different like things that you were looking at as significant. This book, like every sentence feels like you could write a paper about it. So because of that, you go to write this paper and it's going to feel a little bit overwhelming to be like, I don't know what strategies I'm going to want to write about, right? So you're kind of doing the work for your classmates where you're like, this could be a good strategy to write about. And you're like talking about all the things he does in that passage that are persuasive to his audience. And the presentations, I kind of want them to be around 10 to 15 minutes. Like it's long. But when I say presentation, what I actually mean, and I shouldn't have used that word, what I actually mean is you're teaching it. So part of the length of that is you asking people, like having the class do some of that work for you. So you're going to have ideas going into it, but then you say like, what does hateful mean to you guys? How is hateful different than appalling? Like you're kind of putting that work on them and trying to get them to interact. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying I'm the very best at this, but you can kind of use the way that I do this as a model for like how much work you're making the class do versus how much work you guys are doing in your presentation. You always want to make sure you're doing the work of like connecting all the comments together, but they're doing the work of like coming up with like significant things about the passage. And then you can always guide them and you can say like, well, I also think about this idea, and the group can present like an idea that they had that the class is not coming up with. Okay, that makes sense now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're going to have the rest of class to plan on how you are going to teach your concept. You can, if you want to, you can get creative with this. You could do some kind of activity as long as it like lasts within that 15 minutes and is getting at what you want it to. You can. You can make our students write. If you're like, why don't you take a second and write down all of the synonyms for hateful that you can? And then everyone's going to have to do it, you know? The only thing you can't test them. I'm I'm not gonna let you give them a test, but you can make them draw, you can make them get up and move around, like you can use whatever skills you want that you think effectively teaches why this passage is a good passage for persuading the audience. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Then plan it. I'm not going to collect anything. So, but I would definitely in your groups all have notes, because when you get up here, you don't want to just have one person doing everything and the rest of you like standing awkwardly. And you don't want to have you like are passing things around and you're like, what were we going to say again? And, like, looking at this, or like a lot of times, not for you guys, but a lot of times we'll get people standing up here just like giggling for a full 5 minutes. You want to try and be professional. You want to be effective. Okay. So prepare whatever you need to in order to be effective. Okay, go ahead.
I just what I wanted to show you guys. I wrote down-
No. No, but that would be real fun, and I'll record it and show everyone. Okay, so if you're working at home for this, you're gonna have to do this on your own. You're not gonna do the presentation on your own, but I wanna see that you are using this last 40 minutes of class to plan a hypothetical presentation. Once you get back to class, during our presentations, I think I will just, there's a lot of people missing today, so I wasn't anticipating that. But I think I will just absorb you into the various groups. And they'll kind of like show you their ideas and get you caught up. Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna have to do. But for your participation points for today and for your score on this assignment, you need to be preparing one of your own. So you chose your own passage, and then you're gonna like show, like give me all of your notes that you would use if you were the hypothetical teacher of this passage. So let me just show you what my notes look like when I teach a lesson. So like this is an hour-and-a-half lesson. I've got about that much, kind of writing what questions I'm going to ask and examples I have and definitions and so on. That's kind of what I'm looking for you on this. So let me know if you have any questions. I know this is a weird one to do by yourself. And you get participation points for this and a separate score, and it goes on second quarter. Okay, and that is the end of today. They're doing this for the rest of class.